Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Learn and Share webinar, Grants for Educational Materials through the National Book Fund. My name is Michelle Smith. I'm the membership manager here. My contact information will be provided on a slide in the presentation, so please reach out if you have any questions about your membership. Before we get started, we're just going to go over some housekeeping rules. Your phones will be muted during the presentation. If you have questions, please type them directly into the question box, which is different than the chat box. We'll monitor the questions throughout the webinar, but we'll be answering them all at the end, so please don't worry about, we'll make sure we get time to answer your questions. And everyone who registered for this webinar will receive an email with a link to the recording, and that'll go out tomorrow automatically. I will now hand the floor to our presenter, ProLiteracy National Book Fund Program Director, Alicia Suskin.
Thanks, Michelle. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me today to learn more about the National Book Fund. I have an agenda up on the screen that's just going over what we're going to cover today. I'm going to, start off talking about what the National Book Fund is and some general requirements and eligibility, and then explain a bit about how to apply and craft a strong proposal, and then we'll have some time for additional information and questions at the end. The presentation itself will probably be approximately half an hour long. In the past, this is the fourth year I've given this webinar, I think, and usually a lot of people have questions at the end. So I wanted to make sure that we had about half an hour for that. So feel free at any point during the presentation to type your questions in the question box, and then I will get to them when I'm finished. Okay, so what is the National Book Fund? For those of you that aren't familiar with it, the program was established in 1995 to help programs across the country gain access to materials necessary to effectively run their programs. We saw as an organization that a lot of programs couldn't afford to buy books and instructors had to teach without them. We're now going into our 24th year of the National Book Fund, and the need for the program is still just as strong as ever. And we are continuously working to not only sustain the program, but to improve it for programs across the country. In the 23 full years of the National Book Fund, we've awarded over $3 million worth of books and materials. The National Book Fund does not give away a cash component, so that's important for you all to know. What the National Book Fund is the awards granted are only in the form of materials listed on the application and order form. So I'll go into more detail about that later, but that is important for you to know. So general requirements and information. The application cycle is a little earlier this year. It's going to run this year from February 1st. It's already open, and applications are due March 15th. You can apply for materials listed on the National Book Fund order form, as I mentioned, and that order form is available to download directly in the application. And I'm going to mention this probably several times throughout the webinar, but it is the only order form that is accepted. So that's really important for you to remember. On average, we fund approximately 65% of applications that we receive, but that number does fluctuate. It all depends on how many applications we receive versus the support ProLiteracy receives for the program through individual donors, foundations, and corporations. ProLiteracy actively seeks support for the National Book Fund year-round, and so we only approve grants for the amount of funding that we've raised for the program that year. The National Book Fund funds organizations providing services to adults in the following areas. So typically basic literacy, adult basic education, ESOL, HSC prep, math, family literacy. And some things to keep in mind to be eligible. You need to have a clearly defined specific need or project for the materials being requested, and intend to use the National Book Fund materials directly with adult students receiving literacy instruction, or with your staff, instructors, or volunteers. There are professional development materials as well. And you cannot have received a National Book Fund grant during the 2017 or 2018 program cycles. You'll be seeing a link to our website later on that will show you where on ProLiteracy's website you can get to the application, and it will show you the 2017 and 2018 recipients. So that's the easiest way for you to look up if you're not sure if your program's received one in the last 2 years. But you can also always contact me if you still aren't sure. And then just answer all the questions on the application to the best of your ability and upload all the required forms. So if you have any questions on if you're eligible to apply, you can always reach out to me if you're still not sure if the need or your project makes sense or falls into the categories of the types of organizations that we fund. So applying online, it's really easy to access. We switched to an online application last year, which a lot of people have said was really helpful and easy. You just email the application to me, which I know could be confusing. So the easiest way to access the application is to go to ProLiteracy's website. The link is up on the screen if you want to jot that down. We will be sending this presentation out to you afterwards as well. And then once you get to that page, there's a link for you to click here to apply, along with a lot of other information on the National Book Fund. Once you've gone to our online grant portal, I'd recommend maybe saving that page to your favorites in your web browser, so that way it's easier for you in the future to get to it, but that's completely up to you. And then important to know that when you're applying, the online grant portal will automatically save your application. So you can work on your application over a couple of days, a couple of weeks, just as long as you submit it by March 14th. You don't even have to click save. Whatever you type in, the system is automatically going to save it for you, which is really helpful. It just does it in real time. But it is important to know that the application will automatically close at 11:45 Pacific on March 15th. So if you haven't submitted it, at that point, unfortunately, the system will close. So just make sure that you do that ahead of time, because then you won't be considered. And it's not up on the screen, but once you've submitted your application, you should receive an automated email to the account that you have registered in the system, and it'll let you know that your application has been received. But you can also always check with me if for some reason you didn't get that email, but that shouldn't happen. Okay, so on the screen, I have a screenshot of what the online grant portal login page looks like. So there's instructions on the right. You have your email address, enter your password. All applicants must create their own account. So these accounts are separate from Education Network. I know I get that question a lot. Or people sometimes ask me, has anyone else in my organization created an account? If you are the one applying, you need to be the one to create an account. We do use this online grant portal for a few things, multiple different types of applications, but that's okay. You can have several users in your organization set up an account. If you're not sure, you can always contact me. But another easy way to check is to click the Forgot Password link. I just popped up a little arrow to that. If you type in your email, and if you forgot your password, that's really helpful too. But if it says that you don't have an account or they're not finding an account, that probably means that you don't have one. So then you can just create a new one. Okay, and then once you've created your account, you've logged in, you're going to see a screen that looks just like this. Be aware that we do use the system, as I mentioned, for other types of applications. This is our online grant portal. So what you'll want to do is make sure you're applying for the National Book Fund. Everything says what it is and explains a description of what you're applying for. but you'll just look where this circle is coming up for National Book Fund 2019. That's what this webinar is about and you want to apply for. You are able to preview the application ahead of time if you just want to take a look at what's required, what kind of questions it asks, but you don't want to actually start an application. When you are ready to apply, you'll just click the blue apply button, and then you can start your application. Like I said, you can sign in and out of this, come back in, it'll automatically save it for you. You do not, some people have asked me this already, so I'll just point out in the top right, you'll see a box that says enter access code. You don't worry about that for this. Sometimes there is a moment that you would need to enter an access code, but not for the purpose of the National Book Fund, so don't worry about that. And then anytime you log in, you will be brought to this page and see if we have any other types of grant opportunities that you could apply for. You'll see at the top of the screen, there's like a home button, the apply page. There's also an option you can look at your organization history. So in the future, you can log in and see like any applications that you've applied for, if you've been accepted or rejected. So that's just helpful information for you to know about. Okay, so now you've logged in, you've started your application, and I just want to give some information about crafting a stronger proposal. You want to make sure that you're following directions. That's the most important thing you can do, and make sure that you submit all the required forms and the up-to-date forms. I would say that the main reason that programs are not funded is by not clearly answering the questions on the application and submitting the wrong order form. I cannot say it enough, it must be the 2019 National Book Fund order form. It is different than the 2018 National Book Fund order form. It's also different than the New Readers Press order form that you might be used to filling out. If it doesn't say 2019 National Book Fund on the top, it will not be accepted. So just make sure you're downloading it right from the online application. And then also, as I mentioned, there is a 2-year waiting period between the receipt of a grant and when you can apply again. So I would say that's another big reason for programs not getting funded. Since switching to the online grant application, I will say that we've had much stronger proposals last year, and many of the reasons programs weren't getting funded in the past should not be an issue now because of the way that the system is set up. In the past, programs would forget to submit, like upload certain documents and submit them. They would fail to answer certain questions. What's really nice about the online system is you will not be able to submit your application if you don't upload a form or if you forget to answer a question. The system does not allow you to leave something blank that is required, and so it'll let you know that you've forgotten something. You do still, of course, need to make sure you check your work thoroughly just to make sure you're answering the questions clearly and thoughtfully. And that you're uploading the correct forms, obviously. So I would recommend once you've uploaded it, maybe clicking on the hyperlink that shows what you've uploaded and just making sure it's actually what you want to submit. But last year, the online system did result in much stronger applications. And just a little bit of advice, I've already talked to a couple of people through email this year about it, but just make sure you're providing as much detail about your program as you can and how you're going to be using the materials, why you need the materials. We receive over 100 applications every year, and we have a team of people that are reviewing this, and we might not know much about your program. So if you have 1,500 characters that you're allowed to answer a question, I really urge you to use as much of the space as you're allowed so that we have a clear picture of why these materials are going to make an impact on you, your students, your volunteers, your tutors. It's really hard for me, to justify funding programs that maybe only enter 100 characters when they have over 1,000 that they could have provided information. So that's That's another really important piece about submitting a strong proposal because there is so much competition. And then I'd also recommend just reading the 2019 guidelines before applying. Those are on ProLiteracy's website. That link is going to come back up at the end, and that will just give you some good information about the program and hopefully strengthen your proposal. Okay. So applicants will be notified if you are receiving National Book Fund award or not by April 19th. You're going to receive that by email. And it'll be the email that you created your account under. So just make sure that, someone is available to check that account. And if you are awarded, you're going to be required to log back into your online account where you applied to the grant. And then you're going to have to electronically sign a letter of agreement. So the awardee must agree to acknowledge ProLiteracy and public awareness activities, and you're also going to need to complete a report within a year. Once that agreement is signed, we will ship your, New Readers Press is going to ship out your materials, and the majority of the materials are received by programs in June. So basically, as soon as you start returning those agreements, those electronic agreements, I start working with New Readers Press in the warehouse to get those orders ready and get them sent out. And our goal is to get them all out before the end of June this year. And then, as I mentioned, an online report has to be submitted a year later. And I just really cannot stress enough how important those online reports are. They allow us as an organization to update statistics about the program so we can seek out additional funding and just also enhance the program. You guys give us feedback so that we can improve it. It's the whole reason we switched to an online application, which a lot of people have found helpful. The photos and personal statements that you guys include in the evaluations are also regularly used by ProLiteracy. We use it when we're speaking to funders or just promoting the National Book Fund in general. And just remember, we're constantly raising funds so we can continue this program. So the information you're providing to us in those reports is so important for us to be able to continue the program. We really would not be able to continue it without your feedback and the information you provide about how you use the materials. Okay, so if you aren't sure if you're an organizational member or when your membership is set to renew for ProLiteracy, you can contact membership@proliteracy.org. Email's right up on the screen. Non-organizational members of ProLiteracy are required to pay a 20% match for their award. So I'm really excited. For the past couple of years, we've been able to offer this member benefit and completely waive the match for our organizational members. So you'll just want to make sure that if, around the time that you're accepted, by like mid-April, that your membership is up to date. Because if it's not and you receive an award, you'll need to pay a 20% match. And I will say a lot of the times, membership is less than the cost of what the match is. So if you have any questions just in general about that, you can email membership@proliteracy.org. Also, just make sure you remember your login information. I would suggest writing it down somewhere safe, or at least just documenting the email address you used to create your account, because you can always click the Forgot Password button if you forget your password. We're going to continue to use this online grant portal for a variety of other types of applications, such as opportunities to pilot and test new programs with us. We just used it for presenter applications for conference. So some of you might already have an account if you applied to present at our conference. We're also going to be using it soon for conference scholarships. So just keep that in mind and keep an eye out for that in your email when that opens up. And as I mentioned a couple of slides back, the system will automatically save all of your applications you've submitted, whether you're accepted or denied. It'll let you keep track and alert you of all those follow-up documents like your yearly report. So it's really helpful just to like make sure you remember that information so you can easily access it and look back on when the last time you received a grant was and like what you said in your application. Okay, so we already have questions coming through, and that's really what I wanted to cover based on the feedback that I've gotten from people in the past. You can email me at nbs@proliteracy.org. You can also, Michelle Smith, who did the introductions, you can, if you have any questions about membership, you can email her. The link to get to ProLiteracy's website to access the National Book Fund application is right up on the screen. But now I want to take time to answer any questions that you guys have.
Okay, Alicia, we have one question about the special grant money for the Washington, D.C. area. Do you consider Baltimore City, Maryland to be in the Washington, D.C. area?
Yes, that is a great question. So we do from time to time receive funding that is designated for specific areas. And I will say, if anyone on the phone lives like approximately within 50 miles of Washington, D.C., you may be eligible to receive a National Book Fund grant that is funded, designated by a donor for that area. And there, you will see a note online that programs located within 50 miles of DC can apply every year. So currently, because we have this funding, programs within 50 miles of DC can apply every year. And I do believe that Baltimore is within that range.
Next question, can users at remote sites share login info to collaborate and work on the same grant application form?
Sorry, my screen just timed out. Yes, that's not a problem. You can share your, sorry about that. You can share your login information with anyone as long as you feel comfortable sharing it with them.
And they probably can't log on at the same time, correct?
I don't know. I don't think it's like a Google Doc where you can share or work on it at the same time. I'm actually not positive of that.
Okay. And next question is, are New Readers Press online materials included in scholarship money?
There are some digital products on the order form, but not all of the digital products. Like I know, for example, you can request News for You, but you can't request News for You online. So that's why it's really important that you use specifically the National Book Fund order form, because it is a little bit different than, not every product is available through the National Book Fund.
Okay. Let's see, are there any good condition used materials available that would cost less than new?
Not through the National Book Fund. All of the materials are new materials shipped from the New Readers Press warehouse. And I don't know about anywhere to get used materials, so sorry. That's a great question, though.
I am the fiscal agent for, here's another question. I am the fiscal agent for 5 adult consortiums. My ProLiteracy account is for my county. Do I have to apply separately?
That is a great question. That's from Diane.
Yes.
Diane, I would recommend you reach out to me separately so that we can, I would email me at the nbf@proliteracy.org. Sorry that my screen keeps timing out. I would email me and we can talk about that, because that's probably going to be pretty like case specific. There have been times that I have allowed programs to apply all together, but it'll really depend more on like what you're looking to do. So it might make sense for you to apply separately, but we can talk about that.
Okay. Next question from Robin. The 2-year wait period to reapply is per agency, correct? Not per program? I'm
not quite understanding what the difference is, but yes, it's per agency. So if, you know, ProLiteracy was applying for a National Book Fund grant and received it in 2017, I would have to wait until next year to apply again. I think what you're talking about is if your program received like GED materials and then in 2 years, or, you know, next year you want to apply for maybe some, I don't know, citizenship materials for a different program, you would still have to wait the two full years.
Okay. About how much money is usually applied for and awarded with this grant?
That's a great question. And it says it on the website. I forgot to add it in the PowerPoint, so thank you for asking that. Typically, awards range between like $500 and $2,000. But don't let that limit you. Sorry, I'm like, don't let that limit you. I have so many programs that their order form stops like directly at like $1,999. You can go over $2,000. Don't worry about that. If you're concerned and you think that maybe you're requesting too much, you can always talk to me about it. But I would say, you know, request what you need, and as long as you sufficiently like answer the questions about why you need those materials and make a strong case, it shouldn't matter if you go over $2,000. I've also awarded like $200 worth of materials to programs, and if that's what you need, that's fine.
Okay. Are there any additional criteria or priority for applications from, I think this is supposed to be a religious organization. I'm not sure if it's regional organization or religious. That's from Eric.
I would say for either, no. You just need to be doing like direct service with adult learners. So if you're trying to, I gave that list earlier that, you know, HSE prep or adult basic education, basically ESL. We just wouldn't do like if you're a church and you wanted to do a book giveaway, we wouldn't do that. There needs to be some like direct instruction component or professional development component.
Okay. Next question. Are we able to view the order items ahead of time to determine if the materials would be useful in our programs or if we already have older versions of them?
You can view the order form if you create an account and log in. It's in the application. So you could go to the preview form and download it. I guess I'm not completely understanding the question. So if you have like an older, are you asking about seeing the actual like materials or seeing the?
That's what she's thinking. Which I mean, I think some of the materials on New Readers Press do have a look inside. Not all of them, but you can get, if you explore the New Readers Press website. While you can't use that order form, you can certainly explore the New Readers Press website to see the products and read more about them to get an idea for content. And again, some of them, you know, will have you or allow a view inside, not all, but that should help you in terms of learning more about a product you're considering.
Yeah, thanks. And then also, you know, if there's a question that you have about specific materials, you can always, you know, if your answer is not on the New Readers Press website, you can contact New Readers Press. You might already have a sales rep that you work with, or, you know, contact the customer service line and they'll be able to answer like any of your questions, or contact me and I can connect you with someone to get you an answer.
Okay. Next question. If you apply for a grant for $1,500, can you be awarded a lesser amount?
Yes. I don't know why this keeps Xing out, so I'm just going to leave my screen like that. I apologize. Yeah, sometimes we do not award the full amount. I do my best to be able to award programs the amount that they ask for, because I think that it's really important. It kind of relates to what you said you were going to do in your proposal. But sometimes, because like I said, we only have as much money as was raised that year. So there have been times that there's a really strong proposal, but I just don't have the funds to grant everything. And in that case, I would reach out to you. When you got accepted, you would receive a notification saying, you're accepted, however, you're only receiving this amount instead of $1,500 worth of materials. And then in addition to uploading or submitting that like letter of acceptance that I talked about you have to do online, you would also need to upload a new order form that reflects the amount of materials you were awarded. So it's not common that we do that, but it does happen sometimes. That's a great question.
Okay. We don't have any more questions unless somebody, if you have more questions, please feel free to type them into the chat box. We can stay here as long as needed to get your questions answered. It is an important program, so we encourage you to apply. And if you have any questions about it, do that. Now's the time to ask them. Of course, Alicia will be available afterwards, but this is a good time to...
Someone else has a question. They're typing it.
Okay, terrific. We got somebody typing it. What are the top 3 things not to do?
Yeah. So, again, uploading the wrong order form, that's the biggest, honestly. Even a lot of people upload like a regular New Readers Press order form or National Book Fund order forms from years past. And the second would be not clearly answering questions. Answering questions for like I gave the example earlier, you have like 1,500 characters and you only provide like 100 or 200. If I want to know how you're going to use the materials, I need something more than our tutors are going to, use these materials in one-on-one tutoring. I want to hear more about like the structure of that and why you're choosing these specific materials and maybe how often your tutors are meeting with the student to use it over, a certain amount of time. So the details really help us decide, and a lot of people leave out information that's really helpful. The third, the third thing, I would say just not reading the guidelines. I mean, sometimes I receive applications from people that, want to use it for like a book giveaway, which we don't do. Sometimes people apply because they want to do it for like children, and this is for adult learners, so that would be an important thing to keep in mind if you're on and you want something for childhood education. Yeah, I would say I can't really think of like a strong third, but the top 2 are making sure you do the correct order form and then just making sure that you're answering the questions with a lot of detail.
Next question. If not approved, are we told the reasons it was denied?
Sorry, what is it?
Just to repeat, the question is, if they're not approved, are they told the reasons it was denied?
Yeah, absolutely. You can reach out to me. It won't say like in the email that you receive, but that's a great question. I encourage people to reach out to me because I want every program to be able to receive an award at some point. We're not able to fund every single program. But I've worked with programs in the past on how they could strengthen their application. So it requires, I don't give that information just out just because it would be very time consuming. And I think some programs maybe don't care. But if you do care, please reach out to me and we can have a phone call or an email thread, whatever is easiest for you. I would love to talk about that.
Okay. And a related question is, what are you not looking for in the grant application? Or maybe we should say, what are you looking for when describing the need for funding and impact? And I think you touched on this, but you can...
Yeah, I mean, really, I don't want to say what I'm not looking for. I can't really give an example because I think every year I hear about new types of programs and program structures that I've never heard about, and it surprises me. And, we really want to give these materials to programs that need them, whatever it may be. But the better you can paint a picture of that program, especially if it's a little less traditional, it just makes it easier for the programs or for the people that are reviewing your program to know why it's so necessary.
And I think if I can add in here, having looked at some of these before, it's not sufficient to say you don't have money or you have a low budget, because that's pretty much universally true.
Good point.
The argument you have to make is, again, stronger about how those materials will empower you to serve more individuals or better serve existing individuals. And again, that's not sufficient to just say you don't have a lot of income, because pretty much every program applying is not necessarily, these are not for profits. So we do have another question. Do you have a rubric you use to assess the grant applications? If so, would it be possible to view this?
We do have a rubric, but we don't give that rubric out for people to look at. I will say that the rubric is pretty close to just asking, kind of reiterating the questions that are in the grant, and asking if, the question was effectively answered. And then, you're scored on a scale of, I think I changed it, it's like 1 through 5. And then we kind of add it up, and then people, the reviewers will put in their comments, but we kind of add up the scores and look at, the higher versus lower. And then sometimes the comments do, weigh in, but if you clearly answer the questions, that's kind of your best comparison to what our rubric would be.
Another question. Can materials be distributed to students for free, or is the program required to keep the books in the program? For example, instructor or class sets only. I think it's huge for programming in low-income areas.
Yeah, great question. No, you can give the books to students. There needs to be some type of, like I've said, an educational component to it, like a direct instruction. We don't just do like mobile book giveaways. But yes, a lot of programs enjoy giving their students books so that they can take them home with them, or they can, have that. It's very valuable to them. And so absolutely, there's nothing that says that you need to keep these materials in your program. That could be part of your financial need of your program has a model that you allow your students to keep the books. And so, that makes it much more expensive to run your program. And this would help you offset those costs. So absolutely.
Would you please summarize the key elements for a strong application?
Yeah, I think, I've talked about this a bit, but just clarity, really answering the question. Just make sure you read it. Like when it talks about what the background of your organization is and your adult literacy program, just answer it. You'll see. I think I've reduced it to like 6 questions, and it's pretty straightforward what I'm asking for, but sometimes people go off on tangents and provide information that is not relevant to the question. So just making sure that you stay on track. Maybe ask someone to proofread it and make sure that you're clearly answering it. And if it makes sense to them, it might even be helpful to have someone that maybe doesn't even know about your program read it and see if it makes sense to them, since we might not know anything about your program. So just making sure you're providing that detail so that someone on the outside can understand.
That's a good suggestion, Alicia. Next question. If denied, can you apply again the following year?
Yes, absolutely. And I would encourage you to, reach out to me and talk about why you were not accepted, and we can work on how to strengthen your proposal for next year.
Okay. I don't have any more questions in the queue. If anybody has some questions, please feel free to type them now. We'll be happy to address them. We'll give it a few minutes for people to formulate their questions. Okay, I don't see anything new coming in. Again, you have Alicia's contact info there, mbs@proliteracy.org, and you can contact her with questions about the book fund, and if you have questions about membership in general, feel free to reach out to me. And thank you again for coming to today's webinar. We certainly hope you will all apply. We look forward to your participation.
Oh, hang on.
Oh, wait, I have a quick question we're going to add in before we close. Do you still have copies of last year's application so we can contact you to discuss it before applying this year?
Yes, and if you applied last year, you would have applied online, so you should be able to see your application as well, unless, of course, it was someone else in your organization. But if you do have a login, we could log in together and look at it, absolutely.
Great, okay. Any other questions?
I have copies, just so people know, I have copies of applications for the last several years. So even if you didn't do an online application, I might still have your paper application that we could talk through as well.
Anybody else have any other questions? Okay, well, thank you again for participating. Have a nice day, everyone.